Welcome to THA Talks, for free thought and open minds. Hello, I'm Paul Ovitelli and welcome to another edition of THA Talks, the alternative podcast show from the UK. Our talks include news, conspiracy, spirituality, the occult, science, history, art, philosophy, religion, and much more. If you'd like to check out our full archive, just go to www.thatalks.com to listen to or to download all our free content. And if there's anyone out there who'd like to contact us and give us some feedback, maybe you'd like to recommend a guest for the show, you can email us info@thatalks.com or go to our website and contact us via the contact tab there. And don't forget, you can subscribe to the show via our RSS feed, and you can also find us on iTunes and Stitcher and many other podcast directories out there. Well, thank you all for tuning in again here into THA Talks. It's always good for you to join us. We have another interesting guest, as always. The return of Carell Lehrburger is going to be joining us after coming on the show during edition 92, quite a while back now, where we spoke about pre-Columbus secrets of the ancient Americas. Now, we had a good discussion then about the ancient Celts and the ancient Vikings, who both visited the Americas many years ago, and this information is not really kind of covered a lot, and that was a fascinating show we had with Carell there, and you can check that out during edition 92. We also touched on the subject of hemp, because Carell's also an environmental activist and a renewable energy entrepreneur. So we touched on the subject of hemp and the energy qualities, healing qualities, and just how much of a brilliant substance it is, basically, that's just simply not used enough. Maybe for obvious reasons, who knows, but certainly reasons that need to be discussed and addressed. So yeah, we wanted to have Carell come back on the show and do a discussion just on that, but obviously sometimes time, people's schedules, it does delay these things, but we're happy to say we've sorted it. And I'm also happy to welcome Shauna Collins onto this evening's show. How you doing, Shauna?
I am doing well, Paul. Thank you. I feel like I just spoke with you, actually.
Yeah, it's quite recently we were discussing you and Stephanie's project up and coming Hijack Radio. So yeah, that's I'm sure our listeners are eager to check out some of your shows for that one. So we're all looking forward to that.
Well, thank you. I am actually looking forward to today's guest.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you coming on today. It was a bit short notice. I managed to get you on the show, so I'm glad you're here with me to do it, because it's a subject which I told you about, because I knew that it was something that you've been interested in the past yourself. And you brought on a guest on the show. The name's gone from my mind now. What was the guest you brought?
Radoy.
That's it.
Yeah. Dave Radoy, I believe.
Yeah, and that was a very good show. My memory's a bit rubbish, but no, I enjoyed that show. Yeah, so this one's going to be a good one, and I think we should crack on.
Let's go.
Hi there, Carell. Welcome back to the show.
Hi, Paul, and hi, Shauna. It's great to return to THA Talks, and greetings to all your worldwide radio listeners out there.
Well, it's great to have you back on. We spoke during edition 92, where we obviously spoke about the pre-Columbus and the secrets of ancient America, about the history of pre-Columbus and you know how many people had made it to that part of America before, which obviously doesn't get talked a lot about. And we had a fascinating talk during there. So if any listeners that haven't checked that out, go to edition 92, and that's a really good talk. And we did touch on the subject of hemp and the qualities of that and how much it's an amazing substance. And that was one thing that we wanted to get you back on the show. It's probably been a bit longer than we'd have liked. Obviously, you're busy yourself and people's schedules, so sometimes it takes longer, but we're delighted to have you on now. I'll tell you what, maybe before we actually go into the hemp side of things, which is what the show's mainly about, are there any updates on the Columbus thing and the visitation of America in the ancients? Because I know it was kind of like an ongoing, unfolding thing when we spoke to you last about it. Has there been any developments? Is there any updates you'd like to let us know about that side of things?
Well, it's a fast-moving target and a very exciting field of endeavor. I would refer our listeners to my book, Secrets of Ancient America, Archaeoastronomy and the Legacy of the Phoenicians, Celts, and Other Forgotten Explorers. And more information about that book and about the new history of America can be found at my website, www.newhistoryofamerica.com. And in that book, I cover about a 3,000-year period in North America, right up to the time of Columbus, and go back through the records, looking at petroglyph sites, and write about all of the foreign travelers that made it to the Americas, that is, trans-Pacific cultures and transatlantic cultures that made it across the ocean, explored, settled, mined, undertook commerce here. And we're talking about going back as far as the Minoans and the Phoenicians, but also many other groups, including the Romans, the Hebrews, pan-Pacific groups such as Indus Valley cultures, as well as Africans. So we have a very multi-cultural history here in America that has been lost to us through the brainwashing and the really loss of our history. So anyone who's interested in learning more about how these ancient explorers, travelers, and settlers and miners made it to the New World and what became of them, I strongly urge them to take a look at the book, Secrets of Ancient America, visit newhistoryofamerica.com, and learn not only about our cultural history, but why is it that we've been lied to? So that's a little background for us, Paul. Now, in terms of the updates to the book, what's amazing is that throughout the world of archaeology, there seems to be breakthroughs all over the world on a regular basis. But here in North America, with some notable exceptions, we don't see those kind of breakthrough discoveries that I wrote about in the book. For example, the travels of the Celts, beginning in the New England area, finding themselves settling there at America's Stonehenge in New Hampshire, and over hundreds of years following the river tributaries across the Mississippi into Kansas, Oklahoma, and Colorado, where they left their writing in stone and an incredible artistry with their archaeoastronomical alignments that were set up to note and to celebrate the Celtic holidays. So we have a lot of documentation of that, but we don't see anything about the Celts in America before Columbus in the Smithsonian Magazine or in the National Geographic, and it being taught in the universities, high schools, and even elementary schools who still provide students with information that Columbus discovered America. The point of Secrets of Ancient America was to demonstrate that Columbus was not first, but was really the last explorer, and to help understand why it is that we have these misconceptions today. So regarding the research that's been undertaken in the New World, in North America, Central America, and South America, pointing to foreign travelers from trans-Pacific and transoceanic cultures long before Columbus, remarkably, there really hasn't been any breakthroughs than has already been documented. And this is really, I think, demonstrates how the archaeoastronomical community, which in the book I refer to as the archaeo-priesthood, continues to dominate the archaeoastronomical, archaeology, and anthropology landscape in the New World. Now, there is one rather dramatic discovery in North America that occurred a couple of weeks ago, a publishing of a report of a site near San Diego where human skeletons appear to be dated back 130,000 years. This is remarkable because the existing paradigm in North America is that the Native Americans made it to the Americas maybe 15,000 years ago. So this is really a revolutionary find if it turns out to be true, and is likely to have a tremendous impact on the archaeology of the Americas and the dating of human societies in the New World.
Right.
And as we see with this published report, it's just so striking for the conventional archaeological community to integrate this new information in their long-held beliefs that Columbus was the first. Perhaps the Vikings made it here before that, but all of the evidence of foreign travelers, non-indigenous people making it to the New World are either hoaxes or come from the Native Americans or their ancestors. So this find in San Diego and this excavation is sure to have significant ramifications.
Right.
But to address your question about what's new, we continue to have the archaeo-priesthood in control of presenting the information, and the information being presented is filled with falsehoods, lies, and misinformation.
Right.
And those who challenge these long-held beliefs of the archaeo-priesthood are discredited, and in some cases denied academic privileges and tenure. So I'm sad to report that there hasn't been dramatic changes in the paradigm as I had hoped to achieve with writing and publishing Secrets of Ancient America. But Paul, it's shows like this, THA talks and radio shows where we are able to reach a receptive audience, eager for information and new information, and also willing to challenge the old paradigms. So thank you.
It's a fascinating subject, and we'll definitely have to do some more shows on the future with this subject and to follow that as that unfolds. As you say, it's kind of anything like that now. It's very controversial. There's a lot of agendas going on, a lot of politics behind it all. But it's like you say, we're glad to have people like you doing this extra research that isn't always done by the mainstream. Obviously, moving on to the hemp subject, which is also, we could say the same thing about that, I'm sure, with the political agendas behind so much, with health, with energy, with all kinds of stuff that's involving stuff we intake. Hemp then, so how's about you? I mean, we touched on this last time, and that's why we wanted to do a show where we indulged in that subject again. How did you get involved in researching this brilliant substance, as I'm sure we're going to find out today? And what's the main thing that we're not getting about this substance?
Well, the transition from our conversation on the new history of America and the lies of the old history and industrial hemp, there is a continuity in our discussion. And in 1937, hemp was prohibited from being grown in the United States, an area of prohibition, which we're now just beginning to come out of. And prior to 1937, the United States was a producer of hemp. The fiber was used to make sails and clothing and cordage. The seeds were used to make food, and the flowers were used in pharmacology and medicinal products. You could go into a pharmacy in the late 1800s, Paul, and over the counter you'd find bottles of hemp oil with different percentages of hemp indica and hemp sativa. These are two different varieties with different ratios of the cannabinoids inside the hemp plant that were balanced by the pharmacist to treat specific illnesses. That was 150 years ago. Today, of course, it's been illegal in the country up till the point where several states pushed through marijuana, medical marijuana, recreational marijuana, and industrial hemp laws. So we're really coming out of a dark age, like we are with the history of America. And in both cases, the powers that be have distorted the truth, have lied to us, and have had a political agenda. So there is continuity in this discussion, and although it's a completely different topic, and it also is in a different area of pursuit. In my case, it became a very positive pursuit beginning in 2014 when industrial hemp became legal in Colorado to cultivate and process. We, PureVision Technology, a company that I founded in the high-tech area of processing biomass, which is non-food plant matter, into higher value products, we developed a technology that rapidly deconstructs biomass like corn stalks, hemp stalks, and wheat straw into very valuable materials, specifically pulps to make paper products, sugars to make sweeteners and nutraceuticals, and a fascinating material that we find in hemp in biomass called lignin, which strengthens the plant so that it doesn't break, it bends. And biomass has about 20 to 25% lignin in its composition. And this lignin material and desirable to make plastics. So since 2014, we've been processing hemp into pulps, sugars, and lignin, and along the way followed the market, which is very strong in looking at the medicinal qualities of the hemp plant itself. So since 2014 in Colorado, PureHemp Technology has been processing hemp stalks, and beginning in 2015, we began processing the flowers of the industrial hemp plant into medicinal products that are available here in Colorado and over the internet at our site, www.purekindbotanicals.com. Now, Paul, the hemp topic is huge, and there's so much to talk about. There's the legal aspects to it. There's the distinction between the different applications of cannabis, and that includes the different varieties known as cultivars of the cannabis. Specifically, we have the cannabis varieties that are grown for fiber, like we have in China. We have the cannabis varieties that are grown for food, like we have in Canada, producing seed oil and seed oil-based products. And we have the varieties that are cultivated for medicinal purposes, like we have in the United States. Now, there's a lot of confusion about what is cannabis. Are we talking, is cannabis medical marijuana? Is cannabis recreational marijuana? Is cannabis industrial hemp, also referred to as agricultural hemp? And what are the distinctions between recreational marijuana, medical marijuana, and agriculture or industrial hemp? And this is all very confusing because much of the laws are governed by states and in some cases federal governments. So the discussion I would like to begin with you and our audience is to look at these three different aspects of cannabis and talk about them in the context of what is going on in this country and to a lesser extent worldwide, and what added value we get out of the hemp plant. How does that sound, Paul?
No, yeah, that sounds very interesting. I was just going to say, with regarding how, because obviously when we think of hemp, we're thinking of weed, getting stoned, getting high. Now, could we focus on the point on how in order for the hemp to have its healing qualities, because I mean, there's some people out there that are saying that, you know, hemp can cure cancer and some very serious diseases. It can cure, I think, epilepsy and all this kind of stuff. And obviously, I mean, people that have got these diseases, they might be very interested and think, oh, this is obviously worth reading about. But at the same time, because it hasn't got any solid official, like clarity to it, people are nervous to sort of indulge into this kind of treatment. So a couple points really is the potency of, I'm not sure, is it THC, the potency that you get in it, the stuff that gets you high, is that relevant to how strong it is with regards to healing qualities, or does that not matter? And how much evidence is there really that people can rely on this stuff for healing some of these most serious diseases, and how do they go about kind of studying that?
Well, there's a lot there, so let's begin with the basics.
Yeah, you take the floor.
When we talk about hemp oil,
yeah,
there's often a lot of confusion. There's actually two types of oil produced by the cannabis plant. The first is the seed oil, that is the seeds of the plant that, once they're pressed, produce a high quality nutritional oil, and that has no THC, that has no cannabinoids in it. The other oil is the oil extracted from the flowers that contain cannabinoids that are produced in the trichomes of the plant. Now, cannabinoids are a very special group of chemicals or chemical agents that are found and the most well-known is THC. It's one of the over 100 cannabinoids, and this particular cannabinoid is psychoactive. That is, it gets you high. And most of the marijuana today that we see, whether it's recreational marijuana or medical marijuana, use strains that have THC as the predominant cannabinoid. Now, industrial hemp and marijuana are legally distinguished by the THC content. So in many states, including Colorado, industrial or agricultural hemp is defined as having less than 0.3% THC. That is, if taken, it really wouldn't have much of effect, if anything.
Right.
Over 0.3% THC in the plant makes it marijuana. So it's kind of an artificial distinction, but we're talking cannabinoids that there are over 100 of them. Beside THC, we have cannabidiol. It's called CBD. And CBD is the predominant cannabinoid in industrial or agricultural hemp. So marijuana has mostly THC, industrial hemp has mostly CBD. All of the different cannabinoids will have an effect on the human body. So whether or not you're extracting THC from marijuana flowers, or whether you're extracting mostly CBD from the flowers of industrial hemp, it's a very similar process of extracting the cannabinoids, concentrating them, and putting them in the form of a product that can be taken either as a smokable, as a topical, or ingested directly. So the big point to make here is that from a medicinal point of view, we're talking about the unique cannabinoids produced by the hemp plant, and not just a cannabinoid, but the unique ability of the cannabinoids to work together synergistically to treat specific illnesses. And that's going back to my discussion earlier that we had about going back 150 years ago to a pharmacy where they had bottles of different ratios of these cannabinoids. Now, in those days, they didn't have THC or know about CBDs or what a cannabinoid was, but they did know that the indica variety and the sativa variety of hemp had different effects on the body. And so when they went and formulated medicine for the pharmacy, you would see a bottle that says, for example, 10% sativa, 90% indica, and a 50-50 blend, and a 90-10 blend. In those days, they knew enough about how these different cannabinoids work together synergistically, and they knew enough to know which is the most predominant cannabinoid to prescribe for a specific illness, that it was something that was available to consumers, and the knowledge was quite well known. Today, we don't refer to it as indica or sativa. We refer to these cannabinoids specifically as CBD and THC. And there is 29 states in the United States that have enacted medical marijuana laws. Now, while the federal government, in the form of the FDA and the DEA, don't recognize the medicinal properties or the medicinal benefits of cannabis, 29 states have legislated laws specifically addressing the medical benefits of the cannabis plant. So as it relates to your question about the evidence, there is much anecdotal evidence. And the anecdotal evidence really goes back thousands and thousands and thousands of years, because we know that our ancestors were using marijuana and cannabis, because that is how the human beings evolved the cannabinoid receptors that we have, so that we're able to assimilate these specific cannabinoids. And going back to a recent time, was a tremendous track record in the pharmaceutical and pharmacology and pharmacy area of using hemp and hemp extracts to treat illnesses. And this is one of the reasons why, in 1937, cannabis and hemp and marijuana all became prohibited in the United States. That is, that it was a challenge to the pharmaceutical industry. And it wasn't growing hemp and marijuana was not just a challenge for the pain relievers and some of the medicines produced by the pharmaceutical industry, but cannabis was also very much competition to the newly adapted plastics industry, specifically in the making of dacron and rayon fibers. Hemp fibers were stronger. So we had the perfect storm of these giant pharmaceutical industries, plastic industries, not to mention an age of stereotyping black people, where the laws were changed and hemp became illegal. And it's for that reason that we don't have the kind of documentation and the trials and the medical research that we need to adequately answer your question, Paul. That is to say that because it's been illegal, it's been extraordinarily difficult to do medical research. And even today, it's very difficult. Now, the good news is that even though it became illegal in the United States, other countries continue to grow and research industrial hemp. And in the medicinal areas, that includes Israel, a leader in the area, as well as other countries that have isolated the cannabinoids and undertaken trials of very specific cannabinoids such as CBD, and trials where they use the entourage effect, or the synergistic workings of all of the cannabinoids, to look at how they work in treating specific illnesses. And those studies are increasingly pointing out that cannabis has a dramatic impact on many different conditions and illnesses faced by us humans. But to show you the kind of challenges that we have in this industry, The FDA does not allow a company like Pure Kind Botanicals selling a CBD extract product to make any claims, to even suggest that it has any medical benefits. And that's why hemp extract products in the United States are sold as dietary supplements. So with the in growing legalization of medical marijuana and the growing legalization of industrial hemp and the processing of hemp into CBD extracts, we're going to see more and more trials, research that will be looking specifically at specific illnesses, ranging from mild things such as anxiety all the way to treating different kind of cancers, but not just a shotgun approach that, hey, let's smoke marijuana to treat cancer. No, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a very scientific approach to dialing in the balance of different cannabinoids and the quantity of using those cannabinoids to treat a specific illness. And that's the science that's now gaining a tremendous amount of momentum. And within a couple of years, the science that's going to be able to directly answer your questions, not just with it can treat this or that, but very specifically a formulation of this much THC and CBD can treat this if you use it along these particular lines. So this is one of the challenges that we've had with prohibition, but it's also one of the benefits of legalization, where we do have, and it's not only the medical research, Paul. Here's something that all Americans should be very concerned about. With prohibition, the high-tech companies have not been, and the pharmaceutical enterprises have great difficulty doing research and patenting intellectual property relating to not only the cultivars themselves, but the processing of hemp and the formulating specific compounds to treat illnesses. And while we're in the dark ages of prohibition here, countries like Israel are piling up the intellectual property, the experience, and the industrial infrastructure to move forward, while we're still, in the dark ages trying to figure out, what is the best seed to grow industrial hemp in Kansas, if it's even legal in Kansas, which it isn't.
Right.
So we got a long way to go, but we're getting there.
Right.
And with the adaptation of medical marijuana in 31 states, a majority of the states, and other countries following through in a very big way, like Uruguay, at least we've turned it around and it's going in the right direction now, Paul.
Okay, well, there's a couple points that more I'd like to touch on, but before I do, Shauna, I'm sure you're itching to get involved in this one.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Hi, Carl.
Hi, Shauna.
It's very nice to speak with you today, particularly on these two very expansive ideas. So first, I kind of want to go back, if I can, to the initial part of the conversation in which you were talking about the new history and how it seems like schools have been remiss in acknowledging the long-standing economic growth and trade that had been set up long before Columbus, and how this might actually coincide with the emerging theories of prior evolutions of humanity, even reaching up into the stars. So I kind of wanted to get your take on that.
Well, I've kind of I've segmented your question into two parts. And, the first is right up until the point of Columbus and everything that happened before then, starting around 2000 BC. And I kind of call that the New History of America Part 1. And then everything that's kind of transpired since Columbus, which I kind of call the New History of America Part 2. And for better or for worse, in my book, Secrets of Ancient America, I didn't tackle the issue of what came before 2500 BC, which, some of the alien origins, some of the pre-flood societies. These things were not addressed in Secrets of Ancient America. And I focused specifically on the period of time from around 2500 to the time of Columbus, with an idea of challenging the Columbus mythology that so dominates the landscape. And there was certainly enough meat to do that by documenting the Minoans being here, the Phoenicians, other Mediterranean groups, of course, the Celts, the African cultures that had made it to the New World before the Columbus, as well as Indo-Turkey societies and greater Indus Valley societies. So that was really the focus. And I didn't want to divert my audience's attention by bringing into the topic what other writers have documented, such as Sitchin and others who talk about the connection between cultures, alien cultures, and our human race. So now to do my best to answer your question. The lies that have been perpetuated about our history of a multicultural, very diverse history in the New World are the same lies that really are holding us back in our current culture since Columbus, and also are the same lies that are holding us back from understanding what came before the flood. And remarkably, we have a tremendous amount of evidence of explorers from Europe and Asia coming to the New World, leaving their mark, and it was an exercise, but I think I was able to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that the Celts were here. The smoking guns are artifacts and evidence, and anybody who was to debate that would lose that debate, in my opinion, even though it's not accepted by the archaeological, aka archaeo priesthood. Now, going back before 2500, and it becomes much more speculative, and I didn't write too much about that. And I continued to research that, and there are, especially looking at the petroglyphic evidence and what was written in cave walls throughout the world, there's many anecdotal artifacts and evidence that suggest that we were seeded here by alien races. And that's going to be a great topic of conversation at the upcoming Contact in the Desert conference held May 19th through 22nd at Joshua Tree, California. It's the largest UFO event in the world. And anybody who is interested in learning more about some of the speakers and the topics that are going to be talked about, specifically addressing your question, Shauna, should go visit contactinthedesert.com. There's some incredible speakers addressing that. And the short answer is yes, there is a connection. And when we look at the Secrets of Ancient America, one of the things that I talk about quite a bit is the division between the diffusionist and the independent inventionist. The diffusionist, exemplified by Dr. Barry Fell, who wrote America BC and Bronze Age America, believed that culture came from the outside and it diffused from other cultures. The independent inventionist, which are characteristic of a modern anthropology and archaeology, posit that culture springs up individually and uniquely in different areas. And we have this great debate going on regarding the new history, where diffusionists believe that many of the characteristics of Native Americans came from the outside, whereas the independent inventionist, also known as the isolationist, completely reject that idea. Now, I bring that up because we have the same type of dichotomy when we go back earlier to look at the origins. We have the common scientists today who believe we are alone in the universe, that somehow mystically and magically humans evolved, from lowly creatures, and now we're kind of looking out and seeing if we're alone in the universe, as opposed to anyone who is involved and familiar with UFOs and alien contact information, that it's obvious that we are not alone in the universe, and it's likely that much of human society in the early days was dramatically impacted by these outside cultures, kind of using kind of a diffusionist approach as opposed as a coalition approach. So this is the exciting thing about where we are today in looking at history. We have to abandon the closed-minded views of the paradigm controllers right now, and really embrace an open-minded view of history and events, and employ science and not reject science, employ rational thinking and not reject rational thinking, and most importantly, study the evidence. And in the case of today, UFOs, and millions of people have seen them, thousands of cases have been documented, and there really is proof. The evidence, the claims, the witnesses have all been conveniently rejected by the powers that be in our government, the powers that be in the media, the powers that be in academia. And this is the challenge that we face, Shauna, of how to break through the priesthood that control the information, and establish a fair-minded way of answering your question. Because the evidence is there, it's been the unwillingness to look at the evidence that has been the problem.
I think I would agree with that wholeheartedly. I think that the discernment and giving the people en masse the opportunity to make up their own mind is something that makes, as you say, the powers that be a little bit nervous. Unfortunately, I will not be able to attend Contact in the Desert. It is on the other side of the continental U.S. for me. We actually have one for the East Coast going on the same weekend for the International Academy of Consciousness. And that's actually being hosted, I believe, with the Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters.
Oh, sure.
So they're doing their thing on the East Coast, and Contact in the Desert is happening on the West Coast on the same weekend, which is going to be very interesting to see what comes of it. I like the fact that you used the word mythology when looking at some of our accepted history and Columbus. I also like the description of Columbus as being the last explorer as opposed to the first. And I would take it a little bit further and kind of look at what he was doing as more of a conquering of a space that everybody considers the quote-unquote New World, which was thriving in its own way long before outsiders came in. I think that also is a great segue of showing the control of the old paradigm, as you say, into the new age or the alternative perspectives of today, because it goes all the way from cultural belief structures and spiritual beliefs of the native people of the land that used the land and healing properties. That segues nicely into our issue of control when it comes to hemp and all of its properties. Now, I know that you had mentioned the number of states that were considering or at least acknowledging the medicinal qualities, and some going even farther, like Colorado, and acknowledging the right of people to use this as a recreational escapism, as I like to look at it. I mean, if somebody is using medical marijuana to get high, they're not using it for the correct reasons. But I'm also libertarian enough to say that it should be their choice. Unfortunately, I live in Michigan, where we have seen a massive cease and desist order on anybody producing or preserving the concept that medical marijuana is a right.
Well, I have to applaud your words and thank you for bringing that up and your good work, Shauna. I couldn't agree with you more about the age of the conquerors and the conquistadors, beginning with Columbus, but expanding to Pizarro and Cortez in Mexico, as having continuity with our current age. And that continuity includes the brainwashing that goes on about our history, and also the American exceptionalism that it pervades our country, thinking that we're the greatest, that if you're a Christian nation, you're entitled to destroy other cultures and steal from their land. So this concept of conquering of America in the New History of America Part 1 really is the jumping off point for what we see in the world today. I'll refer to it from a presentation I'll be giving, the New History of America, Part 2. And it's not just history we're talking about, and it's not just UFO and aliens, but it's the whole gamut, including the existence of giants. Giants is another fascinating topic that has been reported throughout human evolution. And there's been much evidence of giant skeletons and artifacts, but they have just completely disappeared from the record. So it's so many topics that we're faced with today, and our worldview is distorted by these overarching paradigms that are based on conquest, based on the quest for gold and money today. Before it was gold, now it's consolidation of money. And this is really the point of writing the book, Secrets of Ancient America, to help people understand that we're living in a lie. And that lie is really, to some extent, goes back to the Columbus mythology that we need to get rid of and change our ways to look at us not just as a white Christian nation, but as a very diversified, multicultural country with many races and a history going back thousands of years ago with travelers coming from all over the world. You know, in the old days, Shauna, just like today, the travelers from the Mediterranean, from Europe, and from Asia made it to America because of wars that were going on, climatic disasters, sea level rising, and this became a refuge for our ancient ancestors, just like America is today, a refuge for other countries.
Or at least what it should be.
At least it should be. Thank you.
I did want to also touch on, there was, I believe Paul mentioned that there wasn't really a lot of scientific evidence or foundation for the use and efficacy of THC and CBD oils in the medical field. However, I can tell you right now, I'm looking at a list of studies, double-blind studies, controlled studies, surveys, and open studies that were done since 1970 on different elements of, again, whether it be smoking cannabis or whether it be a THC dose affecting short-term effect of oral THC in dealing with things like cluster headaches and dealing with multiple sclerosis, sleep disorders, gastrointestinal disorders, and obviously pain, and many of the elements that have to do with studies for cancer are originally, a lot of people, I think, were thinking, oh, well, you smoke pot and you get the munchies. This has to be good for people that have had chemo because it'll make them gain weight, or people that have been diagnosed with AIDS or HIV that can't seem to keep weight on. Oh, we'll give them this, they'll smoke it, and they'll get the munchies and everything will be okay, without really recognizing all of these different. And one example right here, 2013, a double-blind, placebo-controlled crossover pilot trial with extension using an oral cannabinoid extract for treatment of chemotherapy-induced neuropathic pain. This was, again, a controlled study, and it goes into, who actually ran the study. It shows this one has 5 patients that tended to respond positively to the treatment of the cannabis. But as you say, there are not only the 2 different strains of indica and sativa that have different elements and different functions, but there is a whole slew of cannabinoids that people just kind of throw out the baby with the bathwater, so to speak, in things like the Rick Simpson oil, things that can be used for Parkinson's disease. I've seen videos of people that were given CBD oil and within 2 minutes they could sit still and they were crying with gratitude. So the idea that keeping marijuana and all of its elements as a Schedule I drug where you can't even study it in America seems asinine to me. Are you on the same bandwagon?
Well, it's more than that. It's more than asinine, but it's really going back to taking away the foundation of the American creed: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so it's not only taking away our life and our health by not having this available to us, but think about all the people in this country and around the world that are in jail. So it's really a liberty issue of, hey, can we choose what we put into our body? And if we decide that it's a medicinal element, that's our choice. If we decide it's a psychoactive element to make us happy, that's our choice. So I love what you said about being a libertarian. And Shauna, you brought up some great points. And I'd just like to acknowledge that there are a tremendous amount of studies, but in light of not only these studies and evidence that we have by individuals, the FDA has taken the position, and this is nearly a quote, that cannabis has no medical value. And we're really up against a government that has become anti-scientific. They're not willing to look at the facts. They're not willing to look at the research. They're not willing to acknowledge that 30 states have already been down this road and have adapted laws for medical marijuana. So it's really a travesty that we have such an anti-scientific and authoritarian government. So I wholeheartedly agree with you, and it's really going to be what we have to do to turn the FDA and the DEA around from its insane policies of criminalizing our citizens, of denying us the right to heal ourselves, and denying us the right to happiness for those that choose to. So we have a long way to go in this country, but the good news is that with the lessening of the laws in states, and specifically the adaptation of recreational marijuana in 8 states, medical marijuana in 29 states, and I believe industrial hemp can now be grown in over 30 states. We're seeing a synergistic effect around the world of whole countries looking at legalizing marijuana, including Uruguay that has, and Canada that's planning on doing it, as well as the countries that already have it legal. So things are turning around, and the biggest impediment now is our federal government.
Now, I know that Paul is going to want to get back into the conversation here. I just want to touch on the industrial element. As you say, outside of the recreational or medicinal uses of this particular plant, there are a plethora of industrial and textile uses that I don't know that if they carry the same stigma about them as does the flower itself, that people get this kind of mindset of a Bob Marley concert, or a couple of hippies hanging out in hemp t-shirts, and don't realize that the processing and the actual textile element and industry of hemp is not only better for the environment, but could produce a massive amount of jobs, and also create something that is more sustainable than what we're using now. Do you want to comment on that?
Well, this is a topic dear to my heart because 75% of the cannabis plant is the stalk, that it's usually just thrown away. And as I described earlier, with our technology, we have at PureHempTech.com, we have the ability to rapidly produce pulps from the stalk to make paper products. We can extract the sugars out of the stalk to make nutraceuticals and sweeteners. And we can isolate the lignin, which is the strengthener of the plant, to make bioplastics and specialty chemicals. These pulp sugars and lignin become the foundation of the coming bioeconomy. And the bioeconomy is where we rely on plant-based materials rather than petroleum-based materials. Another way of looking at it, Shauna, is whatever you can do with an oil molecule, make fuel or make alcohol, you can do with a plant-based molecule. So with the changing of the tides, we have not only the opportunities to produce these intermediate materials, pulp, sugars, lignin, and extracts from the flowers, and seed oil from the seeds, but from that, a plethora of industries, applications, and products fall out. For example, in the case of the seeds, people think, okay, you squeeze the seeds and you get seed oil. Well, you get seed oil, you get the hemp hearts when you dehull it, which is a product in and of itself, and you get the meal that comes after the kernels are drained of their oil, and flour. So with these oil, flour, and meal and hearts, we have the ability to make hundreds of different hemp products. For example, hemp bars. For example, hemp hearts sold in the store. For example, hemp protein. So part of what we're talking about is intermediate products to fuel our plant-based industrial society of the future. And this is, you said something so critical to this discussion of the green economy, that we're talking about value-added agriculture. And it's not just another substitution of, hey, let's grow hemp as opposed to corn because it will bring us more money. We're talking about a low water plant. It requires 1/3 the water of corn and wheat. It requires much less nutrients, and it doesn't require any pesticides. So we're talking about an incredible a plant that heals the soil, doesn't drain it. And when we're talking about areas of the country, specifically in the Midwest, such as eastern Colorado, Kansas, that rely on aquifers that are being rapidly drained, agriculture and growers are looking for low water crops, and industrial hemp is just such a crop. So the future of our country is substituting plant-based material for oil-based materials and developing the hundreds and hundreds of applications of intermediates from the hemp plant, whether they be in the construction industry for making hempcrete, for making wallboards, and for making alternatives to wood, in the medicinal area that we've talked about, and in the food area of making food and nutritional products from the hemp seed. We're talking about a plant that is qualitatively and quantitatively superior to almost any other seed oil plant on the planet. And because of the so many uses of its strong fiber, its nutritional seeds, and its very potent medicine, it's really a unique gift to humanity. And companies like PureHemp Technology are doing our best to develop technologies that will efficiently and rapidly convert the hemp into these intermediates as a foundation of the bioeconomy.
And it's a fantastic turnover rate as well. I believe the time to process a hemp plant versus, say, a tree is phenomenally different. 6 to 9 months, I believe, is a fair turnover for the hemp plant. But there's also the elements of it not being a GMO product, not needing anything from Monsanto to be sprayed on it, because when you add those things to it, you end up with, more of a negative effect on our health than anything positive. And with the sweeteners, as you said, if you can make sugars out of this is probably a lot more healthy than, say, Splenda, which is about 2 steps on a chemical level away from chlorine. But I could sit here and discuss this with you all day, Carell, but I feel like, Paul, we're coming close to our close. Are you wanting to jump in here?
Yeah, no, it's we are getting towards that time. I just wanted to touch on some of the subjects about more about the obviously the stoner culture, that kind of things. I mean, do you find there's any agendas either way here? I mean, I've kind of, I guess, because I see out there at the moment that the establishment, various parts of it seem to be very, very pro legalizing marijuana, which, excuse me, I think, I guess, there's a big argument to this. I mean, I've got nothing against people having a smoke. I've known people smoke all my life. I've tried it myself and through my life. But at the same time, I have a distrust for the agendas out there at the moment. I mean, we've covered that a little bit with some of the history that we learn and stuff. And it just, with the establishment, I don't trust it. That being said, it seems to swing both ways, because it seems to be that a part of the establishment are wanting it, but there could be also, it could be a reason as to why some of the research into the medical side of it's being held up, because various people don't want it to. I'm sure that's more the Christian and the Islamic and that kind of community doesn't want to see marijuana legalized. Do you think that this controversial side of it has any effect on the development of the healing qualities and even energy, that can maybe be made for in other qualities that can come from hemp?
Well, absolutely. But, the history of humanity is you just are not able to take something away that people want. And the great example is, of course, prohibition in our country, where they made booze illegal. Well, marijuana was illegal for decades, but it didn't stop the cultivation and it didn't stop the use. It just it just encouraged the criminal element to get into it. And it put a lot of people behind bars. So I think that the libertarian perspective is the most important. And I also think that we have to be very careful when we're talking about cannabis, that we don't get into a a self-righteous perspective and say, well, this part of the plant is good because I can make money on it, but this part of the plant is bad because, you can get high on it. This is where we have these different conflicting interest groups. And if we recognize the miraculous plant as a gift, whether we're making textiles out of it, whether we're making paper from agricultural residues that, as Shauna pointed out, can be grown in 6 months, not 6 to 10 years like a tree, or whether a child who has childhood epilepsy is being treated with CBDs, the only cure to childhood epilepsy that is known today. All of these are important, and we don't want to take a position of this is good and this is bad. We have to embrace the whole hemp plant. We have to get rid of the prohibition on growing it. We have to make sure that the people that are tragically in jail are released. We have to accelerate the research going in on the medical applications. And we have to provide, get rid of the barriers for our industries, our companies, our inventors to move this forward, not only for the intrinsic benefits of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but because of the economic benefits that are sure to follow from value-added agriculture and from the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of green jobs that will come out of processing these pulp sugars and lignans stalks that are created by the hemp plants. So let's get on with it. Let's legalize hemp. Let's get rid of the prohibition. Let's make sure that those unfortunate marijuana users that ended up jail are no longer penalized. And let's move the bioeconomy forward, not only for using hemp to substitute for oil-based products, but all plant-based matter for make a healthier environment and a healthier planet for our future.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think when you see that alcohol's legalized, although it's kind of having a bit of pressure put on that itself, to be honest, with the price and certain politics around it, but generally, obviously, it's very socially acceptable. I guess you have to accept that marijuana's no worse than alcohol, and the point is, even if it's legal and people are smoking it, it doesn't mean if there are certain negative effects or if there's things you need to warn people about, you can still do that when it's legal and just educate people about the negative side of things or not. Because I think there's certainly, me personally, looking at the sort of the stoner culture, I kind of think, is it really going? Is it really the way we want kids to be? But making it illegal isn't going to stop them from doing it anyway. And I think it's just a case of, it's like alcohol, isn't it? It's people will drink it or they won't drink it. And you can say to people, alcohol can be great for a social night out, or it can ruin families. So it's a case of education. And I mean, yeah, we could go on for a long time with this one, because as I say, well, with both subjects, with the America's history of America and with hemp, I'm sure it'll be great to have you back on the show again, Cole. If you're free to come back on, that will always be cool. Is there anything else you'd like to let our listeners know about? Any events you've got coming up? Any way means they can contact you, or anything else you'd like to say?
Well, thank you so much, Paul and Shauna. It was, as usual, just an enjoyable show. For those in the listening audience interested in the new history of America and the Columbus mythology, please visit newhistoryofamerica.com to find out more information on my book, Secrets of Ancient America. And for those that are interested in the hemp industry and all the magical things that can be done, please refer to PureHemp Tech. That's TECH.com, www.purehemptech.com, to learn, how we can process the stalk into the thousands of products that Shauna was talking about. And for those that have a specific interest in the medicinal aspects and processing industrial hemp into CBDs and CBDs into hemp extract products, please visit Pure Kind Botanicals.com. That's www.purekindbotanicals.com to learn more about the incredible CBD products that can be made from this miraculous plant.
Brilliant. Well, as I said, we look forward to having you back on the show again to cover another one of these fascinating subjects, or both at the same time, maybe. Thanks again, Carl, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you, Paul and Shauna, and good journeys to you and to those in your audience.
And that was the return of Carell Lehrburger. Thoroughly enjoyed that. I'm glad we eventually got Carell back on the show. It was a long time coming, but I really enjoyed it. Both fascinating subjects, and both subjects which I'd love to have back on the show again with Carell. And what do you think, Shauna?
Yeah, I could say I'm definitely still buzzing from that conversation. It is that time of the year, too. There's a lot of conferences going on, so it's understandable that maybe some of our guests are not as readily available, but there were so many different topics that we could have gotten into with Carell that I really hope to be invited back for part 3.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with the hemp side of things, as I said towards the end there, I look at the stoner culture, and I think it's kind of I don't think it's as fruitful as the package suggests, and I think I can understand why people don't want to promote smoking heaps, because it kind of turns into doing it as a kind of a nice thing you can do just to experience something different, a bit of inspiration, into just doping yourself out and turning into a zombie, which I have seen with a lot of people, and it's kind of, yeah, man, I'm just going to do my head in and get completely smashed and send my brain to sleep. And it makes people lazy, not very creative, and paranoid, and all that kind of stuff. So there's an agenda out there pushing it, of that side of it I don't trust. But like with most things nowadays in our society, there's always seems to be a flip side to everything. Obviously on the other side, it's a plant that we've got a history with, that has got fantastic health benefits, fantastic other benefits, whether it's down to even making clothes, even energy. It's got so much there to it. So it's a case of spotting the force that's pushing it and making sure that you do it for the right reasons,
I would agree 100%, but I think you also have to look at, between the three of us, we had completely different perspectives. Now, you're from the UK, I'm from the East Coast, and Carl's on the West Coast. These are completely different cultural designs and perspectives. So while I would agree that controlled situations go with controlled substances in environments where they're being used for the betterment as opposed to the escapism of the person, I also think that a lot of it comes down to where that agenda is coming from. As you said, if there's somebody in the back room saying, hey, we need to get the people high so that they're not worried about what we're doing.
Yeah.
On a governmental level, that's one thing. But if it's being used for the evolution of people, I think that it should, again, I think I gotta wave David's flag here a little bit and say libertarianism. I think it's my choice what I put in my body.
Yeah, no, there's a very, very strong argument for that, and I think to be honest, it's kind of that's cool. I just think be careful. Legalizing that is one thing, and for what it is, it's just you get worried about, does that mean that other things start coming into, because there's some nasty drugs out there. And so I'm just cautious with it, but absolutely, I think, when it, for something like marijuana now, where we're so used to its effects and what it is, I think it's a bit, particularly where people are getting prosecuted and even doing jail time for growing it and selling it. They could be focusing on more important things than that. It's. I think the main thing is, what the worry is when it leads on to other serious drugs that people get into, and that leads to violent crime and whatnot. But I think you've got to find a way of separating it, a point where it's just harmless, recreational, social drugs that people enjoy, and when it starts to get serious and stuff. But I think it's always about balance, isn't it? It's about finding the right balance.
Yeah, don't get me started on the gateway farce, because we'll be here for another hour.
Yeah. No, well, that's it. Well, all these hours are going to be unfolding as we enter into the summer. But I think we've certainly gone over a little bit today, but it's been an enjoyable one, and I've really enjoyed having you on the show, Shauna. Obviously, you will be coming on the show more of it, even though you've got your hijack show. I'm sure you'll be coming on here as and when. So yeah, it's good to have you here.
Fantastic. I always look forward to it, Paul. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you for all tuning in, and we're going to be speaking with you again real soon. Got some really cool guests for this show, and also Hijack Radio. Shauna's going to be knocking out some guests real soon. Not literally knocking them out, but knocking them out on the airwaves.
Well, you never know.
Yeah, don't want to get our future guests worried. But no, you've got plenty to look forward to. And as I said, keep sending your messages. Let us know what you think. Got any advice or recommendations? Keep linking the show. Keep telling your friends about the show. And more importantly, keep downloading the show. Till the next time, we'll be looking forward to it. Take care. Bye.